Florida has tightened its over-the-counter gun laws in the aftermath of the Parkland shooting, but private sales still make it just as easy to obtain a firearm as buying a lawnmower. ABC 7's Jess Dowdrick joins us to explain what Florida's law says. Jess.
Alan, the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas Public Safety Act was passed in response to the Parkland shooting. It tightened gun laws by allowing law enforcement to take away weapons from anyone who they see as unstable. The legislature banned bump stocks and created a 3-day waiting period on all gun sales. But what hasn't changed are laws surrounding private gun sales. The oldest gun shop in Florida sits right here in Sarasota. When someone walks into Francis Missintone's shop, the bullet hole, to purchase a firearm, they have to fill out this paperwork.
That form is nothing more than an information about the person buying the gun.
It asks things like, have you ever been convicted of a felony? And have you ever been committed to a mental institution?
And then it goes to the FBI computer, the NICS check, NICS, and it comes back approved. That person then can purchase the gun. If they have a concealed carry permit, they can take it the same day. Without the concealed carry permit, they have a 3-working-day waiting period in the state of Florida.
Because Florida is what's called a non-registration state. It's much simpler to purchase a gun from a friend or even a stranger on the internet.
You want to sell your gun to your neighbor? Have at it.
According to local attorney Jeff Young, when a firearm is sold outside of a gun shop or gun dealer, the only thing the seller is required to do in Florida is make sure they're a Florida citizen.
But other than that, there are no additional checks that you need to do. You don't have to run a background check. You can't sell to them if they're a convicted felon, but you have to know that they're a convicted felon. So if you don't know, but there's no requirement for you to even ask or anything along those lines. It's treated as a private sale of any other type of property. If I wanted to sell you my lawnmower or anything else, it falls in the same category.
And once that firearm is sold, the seller is not responsible for anything the buyer does with it afterward.
If I take that firearm and go commit a crime, there's nothing legally responsible for you. The only thing would be is if, for example, if you knew I was a convicted felon and you sold it to me anyway, then that would open you up to criminal prosecution.
Florida's private sale law is very different from states like Maryland and Pennsylvania.
Some states have laws that say you can't do private sales without a background check. Some states have what are called registration, which means anytime you buy a firearm, you have to register it with the state so that they know who bought them, how many you have, and where you're keeping them.
State Representative Margaret Good supports universal background checks. That means whenever a firearm is sold, whether at a gun shop or through a private sale, the purchaser would have to go through a background check.
And if you look at the data, 96% of Floridians want universal background checks. So there is some sort of disconnect between what Floridians want and what's happening in the legislature, and I'm trying to close that gap.
It's something that has been talked about in the Florida legislature before, especially recently following the Parkland shooting. Representative Good proposed an amendment to the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School Public Safety Act that would have required universal background checks.
You still have a private sale, but the background check part of it goes through a licensed dealer, so that everybody purchasing a gun in the state of Florida would have to have a background check before they were able to purchase it.
Young is glad it did. He and many other Floridians are completely against universal background checks.
It basically creates a database of all the firearms that you purchase and that you own, and we don't like the federal government having a database of all the firearms that we own.
Young says background checks aren't even proven to stop these mass shootings like the one in Parkland.
Every time you pull one of those cases out, you'll see that those people either passed a background check because they had no criminal history, or they were violating the law anyway, like they stole it from their parents or stole it from somebody else, or they legally purchased it. I mean, the Parkland shooter, those were all legally purchased firearms in which he passed a background check. So when people keep saying we need to have universal background checks because it will stop all this, they have yet to point to a single case in which a background check actually stopped one of these issues from happening.
The next legislative session starts in November following the elections this fall. Representative Good says she plans to bring universal background checks to the table once again.
Jess, thank you.